Hi, this is Tessa Lucy, the Director of Compliance and Privacy Services. My office has received several questions related to the privacy of student and employee information during remote learning and remote work. In response to these questions, we've developed this short 7-minute video to assist faculty and staff manage continuity of operations while simultaneously maintaining the privacy of student, employee, and other personal information. There are several privacy regulations that the university is required to comply with, FERPA being just one. Regardless of the specific regulation, there are some things you can do to protect individual privacy and still get the work done. Understanding some of these best practices will help us all confront the challenges that might affect the way that we accomplish our work. If we employ some simple guidelines, we can continue all necessary work in support of the university's operations while not running afoul of these privacy laws. Depending on the type of information, most regulations outline allowable disclosures. For FERPA, student record data can be disclosed to school officials with a legitimate interest. Under HIPAA, protected health information can be disclosed for treatment, payment, and healthcare operations without patient consent. Under the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, non-public personal information can be disclosed to a consumer reporting agency in accordance with the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Under most privacy regulations, some level of disclosures are allowed under certain circumstances without the need for obtaining consent. However, most regulations also require that the disclosure be necessary. None of the privacy regulations were intended to impede the operations for which they pertain. In many cases, if the disclosure is needed to perform an official function, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how. For example, under FERPA, disclosures can be made to school officials with a legitimate interest. A faculty member would need to know some information from the student record of those registered for their classes, but the faculty member would not need to know all of the information from the student record. Disclosures to third parties outside the organization or disclosures to those who do not fall within an allowable disclosure under the applicable regulations are generally only going to be allowed if there is an exception or if the individual to whom the information pertains provides consent. A good rule of thumb is that if the information is personally identifiable and is in any way regulated under quote-unquote normal conditions, we need consent to disclose unless an exception applies. Which brings us to our current situation. Most privacy laws have a public health or emergency exception. In these cases, disclosures can be made to public health agencies, to emergency operations groups, or to certain law enforcement agencies without prior written consent in connection with an emergency if the knowledge of the information is necessary to protect the health or safety of others. However, even if the disclosure is allowable under the public health or emergency exception, this does not mean anyone can disclose anything. Decisions regarding what can be disclosed and to whom still need to be made by authorized school officials. So if you're hearing about announcements from federal and state agencies that lift some of the restrictions around disclosure, this is true, but the devil is in the details. Do not disclose personal information unless you have been expressly authorized to do so. Not sure? Contact my office at privacy@uvm.edu. The truth is, at this point, most threats to public health and safety that arise due to the COVID-19 situation can be addressed without identifying a particular individual. If the disclosure is not necessary to protect the health and safety of our students, employees, or others, we're not going to make those disclosures, and we're going to continue safeguarding the personal, private, and sensitive information that we have been entrusted with. Remember that even when sanctions and penalties for violations to the various privacy laws are being reduced, and in some cases suspended, these reductions only pertain to allowable disclosures. We still have a responsibility to protect the privacy of individuals unless there is no other option. So take these steps. First, if you weren't allowed to share it before, you're likely not allowed to share it now. Second, if you do receive a request and you're not the authorized individual to make the disclosure, don't make it. Refer the request to my office at privacy@uvm.edu. Third, when doing work remotely that includes personal or private information, apply secure workspace and clean desk methods. The more private and sensitive the information, the more secure your workspace needs to be. Have discussions from a private location and keep voices down. Try not to let others listen in and keep screens out of view. Do not print private or sensitive information unless absolutely necessary, and if it is necessary, secure it from the time you print it to the time it is no longer needed. Don't leave documents with personal information sitting on the printer. Don't just leave it lying around. Shred these documents when you're done. Don't just throw them out in the regular trash. Fourth, protect your credentials by logging off when you leave your device and by not sharing your username and password with anyone. Remember that activity that occurs under your login is your responsibility. And lastly, keep doing the great work that you're doing and know that you have help. If you have any privacy questions or concerns, contact the office at privacy@uvm.edu. Thank you.